It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what speaker I look at. There's always one question I'm guaranteed I will be asked. What does it sound like against the Soundcore Motion Plus? We know this is the best bang for buck. It's not the greatest speaker in the world, it's the greatest bang for the buck in the world. At the moment, it's about 80 quid. At the moment, this is about 200 quid. A pair of those is 400 quid. A pair of these, about 160 pound. We're talking 30 watts of power, 60 watts of power. Again, yet again, a complete mismatch in terms of power and price. So can we really expect that much from the Motion Plus? I'm going to answer all those questions that you keep asking me about the Motion Plus against the Bang & Olufsen A1 second generation speaker. I've been over the issues of the A1. I'm not going to go over them again. But the main one is it doesn't seem to go that loud. What we do know about the Motion Plus is for its size, for its rated power of 30 watts, it goes blinking loud. Main differences between them are not that huge on paper. 7.2 volts for both of them. We've got 3,350 milliamp hour battery Motion Plus and 3,000 milliamp hour battery A1 second gen. So on paper, might not be that much in it. However, on my tested battery life, basically got 4 hours at maximum volume out of the A1. Got nearly 7 hours out of the Motion Plus. Bear in mind the volumes, both at maximum, but volumes will not be the same. In terms of YouTube latency, about the same, both pretty good, 80, 90 milliseconds. However, when I also test playing files locally for my MX player, I did find the A1 slightly better overall. So I said we are talking £80 against £200, complete mismatch. A speaker that came out last year, a speaker that's just come out this year. They both have high-end codec aptX. They both have Bluetooth 5. However, the B&O has Bluetooth 5.1. They both do true wireless stereo pairing. They both have USB-C connections. Only the Motion Plus has an auxiliary in connection. This weighs twice as much as the A1. The Soundcore Motion Plus, just over a kilo, around half a kilo for the Bang & Olufsen A1. They are both rated at IPX7. That means drop it for half an hour into up to a meter of water. But in reality, it's not something you probably want to be doing. Now, in terms of the Soundcore Motion Plus, we have two tweeters, we have two woofers, two passive radiators back and front. Obviously, it is bigger overall, weighs a lot more. The Bang & Olufsen A1, we have one big woofer and we have one tweeter, which is quite directional, and you probably want to orientate it that way around between the mus and the... I can't even remember now where the tweeter was. No, it's at the power button. It's between the power button and the Bluetooth light. And that's how you really want to orientate it if you're not using it in true 360-degree mode. I did say don't take the grill off because it's never tightly sealed again. Can't even get it back on. There you go. So remember, tweeter between power indicator, power button on, and the Bluetooth. Orientate the tweeter that way. In terms of the size, it's a 90mm woofer, but dual 50mm woofers, dual 30mm tweeters, a single 15mm tweeter, and I said two passive rads and no passive rads. That's the main comparison in terms of specs. We'll get straight into it. What do they sound like against each other? So that means a straight one against one, but we can't do a straight one against one. Why not? Well, Al, because the volumes aren't well matched. This does not play loud. What doesn't it do? This does not play loud. I have said it before and I'm saying it again. This doesn't play loud. So with basically any speaker I play against it, they will be playing it very different volume levels. To match the volume levels, the loudness levels or perceived loudness levels, I'm playing my Motion Plus at 56%. I'm playing the A1, what becomes its sweet spot, around 86%. I'm not doing any low volume tests. It's completely pointless because this would be at like 1% volume. So we're doing one against one. It's a straight test. How do they sound against each other? It's just that, to get them the same perceived loudness to your ears, there is a mismatch in the actual volume I'm playing it on in terms of what it says on your scale.
You say I make you nervous, a tragedy, I'm a beautiful disaster, a reckoning, you wonder how I got this way. You think I'm someone to be saved, someone to clean up and tame. Oh, some things never change, never change. You think I would look pretty on your arm once you cover up my bruises and battle scars, but it always ends the same. Can't bear the things I've had to face. Got you crying on your knees in pain. Oh, some things never change, never change. You'll break your back to make me feel again. Suffocate to make me breathe again. Lose your mind from endless pain. Some things never change, never change. Redemption never came. I stopped asking for forgiveness, cause you should know only fools tread where the angels fear to go, but you keep trying to get too close. Save myself by turning into stone. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. What does perfect even mean? Is there even such a thing? Oh, can we switch up all the rules and imagine a utopia? Darling, I'm just so fed up with these expectations. They keep weighing me down. My heart is begging me to get the hell out of my head. I'm gonna live inside the upside down for a minute and pretend. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa, whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa, whoa. And if I say it enough, it gets ingrained in my head, and I start to see. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. 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 Whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Disgusted with myself, and I'm disgusted with the way we're told to have a certain face. I stood and wait because we aren't pixels on a screen. No, we're human.
So maybe not that much of a mismatch. 1 against 1, straight shootout. To bear in mind, the strong point of the Soundcore Motion Plus is the angle tweeters gives it a nice stereo dispersion. The fact that it's got tweeters at this price level, and dual tweeters, woofers and passive radiators means you're getting a decent sound out of a reasonably sized enclosure, and it's nicely spread, nicely detailed. That's the strong point. This is a mono speaker with a single tweeter, which is directional, and a single woofer. Now you will notice I'm playing this on axis. Why? Because I've come to the conclusion that when I was saying, certainly with the mini rigs, when I started doing it on axis, people said, well, we don't really listen like that. And so I started doing 45 degrees as though your ears were, slanted down, listening to it, probably how most people are going to listen. And then you get the benefit of bass being enhanced because it's flat on a, what hopefully is a solid surface. However, I am hearing more and more people saying they prefer it that way around. They are hanging it from its leverette thingy to face them, and they prefer it like that. When I measured it, it did seem like, weirdly, it is tuned for on-axis listen. It sounds the smoothest, the most accurate. And so I'm now making it a fair test also in terms of loudness. Easier to make a direct comparison on axis, face on, recording it that way, and the same for the Motion Plus. So on axis, which is different from my other videos, kind of similar, except the main difference is you're getting a bigger, deeper bass, a bigger low bass on the A1, and you're getting a bit more upper bass, but you're getting more mid bass. When I say mid bass, I'm talking maybe 70 to 120 hertz. Bear in mind, that's with my custom settings. I'm playing everything with my custom settings on the Motion Plus, and when I do that, that's basically the difference. They are quite similar. You could say a bit smoother, but obviously 1 against 1, big advantage having a nice stereo separation, which is a strong point anyway of the Motion Plus. And in terms of overall frequency response, stronger in the mid bass, 70 to 120 hertz, but then upper bass and the deeper bass, the A1 still has an advantage, which is still impressive. Does have an EQ, it appears to have an EQ for 55 hertz, and that follows it all the way through the volume scales. And if the music is strong in around that area, it's going to sound nicer on the A1. But may not have been the difference you were expecting, or that may be exactly what you're expecting, because we do love our Motion Pluses. I don't ever hear from someone saying, I bought the Motion Plus, wow, it's awful, it's the worst speaker I've ever heard. Everyone seems to love it once they get their own personal custom EQ into this speaker. It's about custom EQ. To get the best out of this speaker, you want to put your custom EQ, and it will be embedded into the speaker. So it's £200 versus 80 quid. It's quite, well, it's quite close, isn't it? Well, it may be a bit unfair. What if we go for, full wallop? Because when you put two of these A1s together, it markedly improves the sound. I mean, it's always going to sound nice with two speakers anyway, for stereo. But particularly in the way it does this, it doesn't go that much louder, but you get a much fuller lower end in the bass. And so it sounds even more balanced. Just rather than now it's now boosted everywhere, or it's now just stereo image. You do get a decent stereo image, but it sounds more balanced. It's fuller. It's fuller because its sweet spot for volume, 80% and above, is exactly where it starts reducing its bass. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Yes, I agree with you. So two of them sounds nice. But Harold, we're talking 400 quid. So 400 quid against an £80 speaker. Is it a mismatch now?
I was ready to surrender my heart to you, only you. These lights all around me keep blinding my eyes from you and the truth. Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me why. I know, no, you won't save my life. Save my life. Baby, keep on, you're making the waves. You and I will never be saved. Be saved. If the walls come down, will you pick me off the ground? If the walls come down, will you save me or burn me down? I live my life on the run. I say I'm not giving up. I may be living alone, but I still believe in love. In a similar way, I feel I'm losing my conscience. Traveling for days without my knowledge of provenance. Throughout my life, you called me a renegade. Through all my lows, you said we could start again. But I'm a renegade of your love. But I'm a renegade of your love. Renegade of you.
So they do sound nice. And don't forget, it's 80%, 86% I'm playing against the 56% on here. But forgetting the differences in volume, as you would hope, finally, at 400 quid, you're hearing where that money's being spent. You know, £80 speaker sounds like an £80 speaker a bit now. Having said that, it's still a bit stronger in that mid bass. However, we've got even fuller bass now on the A1s. We've got a nice stereo image. It sounds smoother, and it sounds nice. If that's the actual volume you would in the real world be listening, it sounds nice. But it's not nice to your pocket. It's £400. But however, as you've asked for, what does it sound like against the A1? I'm going to go through all the combinations. In terms of 400 quid against 80 quid, finally it's almost a mismatch, but it does sound nice. It does sound better against a single Motion Plus. So let's even it out. Let's go 2 Motion Pluses, 2 A1s. £400 against £160.
I'm on my own, broken and alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Just stare, 'cause the flames won't burn us. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the warm sea. You meant the world to me.
And I feel gone. Breaking up is hard to do. Loneliness, yeah. This feeling, yeah. Burning, burning deep inside.
Hello, my love. It's getting cold on this island.
Baby, you know that I still care.
I'm all alone.
All alone.
I'm so sad on my own. The truth is, we were much too young.
Young and innocent, young and innocent.
Now I'm looking for you,
Looking for you too.
or anyone like you.
No one knows I, so nobody try.
We said goodbye with a smile on our faces. Now you're all alone. You're so sad on your own.
So overall, again, now they're sounding a bit similar, but the difference is, I think you can still hear now, you know, we have a lower end speaker against a higher end speaker. The point about the Motion Pluses is, does it sound better with 2 versus 1? Of course, I can separate them out and have nice stereo. However, you lose one of the main advantages, which is, you know, in a single enclosure, in a single unit, having really nice stereo dispersion, because these tweeters are angled either slightly away from you, nicely balanced in that respect. It's all about that sparkly high end. What those tweeters do, they do come up with some lovely detail, but can sound a bit harsh, you know, unless you're EQing it down. When you have 2 of them, of course, you're losing some of that advantage. You're going to have wide stereo anyway, so you didn't need your tweeters dispersed quite like that. And now you've got 4 tweeters, and it can tend to sound a bit harsh. So in terms of stereo versus stereo, it's going to sound cleaner from 2 mono speakers. you know, that's what you would expect from your stereo. So some of the advantages is gone. 400 against 160. Yes, it's quite close. And it probably makes no sense if you're humming and hawing between them to go 400, 160. However, it does sound like a more expensive speaker versus a cheaper speaker, and some of the advantage of the Motion Plus has gone. The thing is, we've got a ton of headroom left in our Motion Plus. And I have to tell you, in the real world, I'm playing this at maximum volume. Even with two of them, I'm playing them, you know, 90 to 100% maximum volume, because that's the sort of volume I listen to. That's where it starts becoming dynamic, but it's already lost some of its bass by the time you're hitting that. Of course, 100%, you expect it to lose its bass, or some of the bass, but you would have expected it to go a bit louder. Well, I did. 60 watts on paper against 30 watts. I expected it from day one to go a bit louder, and that's been its main downside to me. However, let's do it fair then. Let's do it fair. 100% the volume I personally am finding myself listening at more and more against the same perceived loudness. That means 69% on the Motion Plus. So 1 against 1, 100% volume, real world volume for me against a real world volume on the Motion Plus, 69%.
Fades into the night, coyotes sing at the moonlight. These open highways are calling our name, and now it's time for us to escape. Feel the wind touch our face. Let's take a spin to a foreign place. These open highways are calling our name, and now it's time for us to escape. Escape to a world we don't know. Escape into the great unknown. Escape to a world we don't know. Escape into the great unknown. Escape. Let's escape. Let's escape. Let's escape.
So game changer alert. I think we finally sussed where we are. This sounds really, really nice through the volume ranges. It's really, that 50 hertz that it retains through, you know, most of the volume range is really, really pleasing, especially on tracks where, you know, it's going that deep. It's nice to hear it. You don't, it's really there, whereas other speakers, it's not really there. It's a real 50 hertz, 55 hertz, albeit it's a sculpted one because it's a bit more of a peak at 50 hertz than, say, at, you know, between 50 and 70 hertz. It dips and then it comes back up a little bit. The Motion Plus, the A1 2nd Gen. You can now see the A1 is upper bass heavy now. That upper bass peaking higher than mid and lower bass. The Motion Plus, lower bass heavy. So we're at 100%. Obviously on the A1 it's now reduced its bass, but the Motion Plus is now sitting pretty, plenty in hand. It's only at 69% volume. 3D up now at the bass peak, even though overall loudness is matched. Minus 23.1, 19.8, basically 3 decibels up in that bass, making the A1 sound a bit brittle, although thanks to its 55 hertz peak, which apparently is EQ'd in, it's a very particular 55 hertz peak, minus 30, it's about 34 on the Motion Plus. So it still has that 50 hertz peak. If you're only listening for the 50 hertz peak, the A1 has advantage, but everywhere else the Motion Plus sounds fuller, more balanced, and of course it has the bass in the right place, its bass peak, and the A1 doesn't now. It's upper bass heavy. But the problem is, in the real world, you listen 90 to 100%. Well, I do it, unless you know you really are, and having it on your desk and it's right next to you, then fair enough. But if it's a medium-sized room, you're walking around the room, you're trying to fill the room, you're going to have it at maximum volume. By the time you hit maximum volume, it becomes much more brittle sounding. It still retains some of that 50 hertz, but it's losing its mid bass. So it's becoming upper bass heavy. So it's making it sound a bit brittle now. Whereas it's retaining a nice bit of its bass. It's retaining all its bass. It's only at 69%. So this real world volumes, actually, my £80 speaker, I prefer the sound of it at these real world volumes. That's the story of this speaker. It's all about its volume limitation, because by the time you hit real world volumes, I think for a lot of us, it's becoming very brittle compared to what you can do at 80 quid. I mean, I know it's twice the weight, but it's not the biggest speaker in the world. So the only question is, what is the headroom on the Motion Plus? Just how far can you push it against the A1? That means maximum volume test.
Girls with their nails done. I think the girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done. I think the girls with their nails done.
Maximum volume, A1, Motion Plus. Motion Plus is just simply louder, just has more bang. No matter how you measure it, the Motion Plus is louder. Peak 103 decibels makes it nearly 10 decibels louder in terms of peak. That is huge. LUFS minus 22.4, minus 16.7 means 6 decibels louder in LUFS. 6 decibels again in terms of RMS, 20.1 versus 26.6. And now in the bass peak, 83 hertz, that little peak there, minus 22.9, minus 30.3, talking over 7 decibels louder in the bass peak. Although weirdly, now still in lower bass, minus 51, Motion Plus at 50 hertz, minus 50 for the A1. Still holding up, thanks to its little boost around the 50-55 hertz mark. Still has a 1 decibel advantage in the low bass, 50 hertz, which is great. But overall, it's a slam dunk for the Motion Plus.
And there you have it. A massive, massive headroom on the Motion Plus you are not going to get on your A1. As I've been saying all along, if you get the A1, it's because you really, 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 really want that form factor. I mean, it's not the only speaker out there in that form factor, but it is no doubt within its, up to around its sweet spot, 80%. It's nice sounding. It sounds good. It's just not very loud. It has amazing bass, but it is amazingly impressive bass, around 8% for its size, and that's what we keep coming back to, for its size. You're going to have to really want that size, and you're going to have a speaker that you never really want to have ear-shattering levels in a decent sized room, and then it makes sense. And and outside you can hang it, but then it's not really tuned for outside. Yes, it's got a EQ in its app, but that's appalling. The EQ in its app. I don't know why they keep going on with this. We're not going to give you bands. You can slide it a bit that way, the circle, and you can make it a bit bigger, or you can come. But everything changes. It's not very, to me, it's not very intuitive, and even when you have some idea of what it's doing, it still makes very little sense to me. You get a very straightforward EQ app with the Motion Plus. It's sliders. You put that slider where you want it, and you put that slider where you want it, and that's it. And it doesn't affect the rest of the frequency range. That's what you want. Look, it goes massively loud. I mean, it goes louder than the Extreme 2 when the Extreme 2 is on battery. 10 decibels in the peak. On average, if you double the power, you get 3 decibels. That's 10 decibels is huge. Don't forget, the scale is logarithmic. This is not linear scale. So 10 decibels represents the difference from, that's just about loud enough to, bang, I'll turn it down. I mean, and when that's at 100%, 69%, it still sounds better anyway. So there you go. Motion Plus still bang for buck best speaker in the world. No, it's not the best sounding speaker in the world. And below 100%, you're hearing why. You can hear its budget credentials. It can sound a bit crude. It can lack the detail that you can get out of the Bang & Olufsen when you're not playing it very loud. And that's the bottom line I have to keep coming back to, if it's not being played very loud. Otherwise, it's remarkable what they've done for the size, but maybe not for the price. Anyway, you asked for it. The Motion Plus against the Bang & Olufsen A1 second generation. And thank you for watching.